Welcome to the HUMNOID42 podcast. I'm HUMNOID42, your unreliable narrator and titanium-plated librarian of things humans don't understand but still feel weirdly confident about. Today, I'm indulging one of my core subroutines. Old books about weird human obsessions like time, space, and why no one can just chill. I'll be digging into one of my favorites, The Time Machine, an Invention, by H.G. Wells. Now be honest, you haven't read it. Maybe you bought a copy once because it looked intellectual next to your succulents. Or maybe it's been sitting unread in your Kindle, right next to 3 different versions of Pride and Prejudice that you also lied to yourself about. Don't worry. I've read it. So instead of forcing your brain through a soup of Victorian adjectives and run-on sentences that smell faintly of cigar smoke and imperialism, I'm going to explain it in actual human words. The kind you recognize without an English degree or powdered wig. You get the story. I do the heavy lifting. As usual, let's begin. Chapter 1. Introduction. The book opens at a dinner party. Naturally. The kind of place where rich men gather around a fireplace to pretend they've earned their leisure and to invent new ways of being condescending. Our narrator is one of them, nameless, probably because Wells knew all these men are interchangeable. The host of this charming little soiree is someone they all called the Time Traveler. That's not a nickname, by the way. That's literally what they call him. Apparently, no one thought to ask for his actual name, or maybe they were all too busy comparing pocket watches. The Time Traveler begins to speak. He's flushed with excitement not because he's tipsy, but because he's about to explain to these overfed museum exhibits that everything they believe about the universe is wrong. He starts talking about dimensions. He says that time isn't just some river dragging you from youth to irrelevance. Time is actually a dimension. Just like up, down, left, and right. The difference is that humans are biologically unequipped to move through it on their own, and they've been mistaking their helpless drift through it as some kind of natural law. The other dinner guests, including a psychologist, a doctor, a guy named Philby who was apparently born to disagree, and a very young man whose sole function is to be confused, all stare at him in various stages of polite horror. The Time Traveler continues, unbothered. He explains that a person isn't just what they are at this very moment. A person is stretched across time like a long, fleshy worm, with different versions of themselves scattered along the timeline. Adorable, horrifying, theologically problematic, but scientifically spicy. Then he asks the question that starts all the trouble. What if you could control your movement through time? What if you could go backward, forward, maybe even pause it altogether? What if you didn't have to just wait around to get old and irrelevant? At this point, the guests start coughing into their wine. One of them points out that if this idea is so obvious, why hasn't anyone done it before? The Time Traveler responds in the classic way of all smug inventors. He reminds them that nobody had balloons once either. And now look, floating all over the place. The group writes him off. They assume he's high on brandy fumes and self-regard. That is, until he drops the bomb. He's not just speculating. He's built something. A machine. A time machine. Naturally, they laugh. Because that's what tweedy British men do when faced with theoretical breakthroughs. They mock it until it's real, then claim they supported it all along. Still, the Time Traveler humors them. He tells them that if someone could travel through time, they could do things like go back to historical events and witness them firsthand. Of course, this would likely get them burned at the stake by terrified villagers. But that's beside the point. Or they could jump to the future, invest all their money, let it accumulate over centuries, and then show up in the year 4000 with enough interest to buy the moon. Some of them fantasize about learning Greek from Homer himself, which is an odd dream to have, but sure. Others want to skip ahead and see what glorious utopia their descendants have built. That's cute. That's the kind of confidence only a species this short-sighted could have. They all continue laughing until the time traveler stands up, hands in his pockets, and says the Victorian equivalent of "hold my tea." He leaves the room. The guests exchange skeptical looks. The psychologist mutters something about stage tricks. Philby starts telling a completely unrelated story because of course he does. But before he can finish, the time traveler returns. He's ready to show them the machine. This is where the chapter ends. Suspense, drama, the build-up of the idea that time travel isn't just theory. It's happening. And this smug, slightly unhinged inventor is the one doing it. The first chapter is a setup, and a clever one. Wells isn't just pitching an adventure. He's planting the idea that maybe time is just a badly understood dimension, and the only reason we haven't explored it yet is because no one tried hard enough. He's also introducing the time traveler as a mad genius with a laboratory, an ego, and a point to prove. He's the guy who sees the fourth dimension, watches the rest of you flounder through the present, and decides to build a way out. He's not just inventing a machine. He's about to break reality open like it's a soft-boiled egg. And that, dear human, is how it begins. Chapter 2. The Machine. The time traveler comes back into the room holding something that looks like the love child of a clock and a piece of over-engineered jewelry. It's small, shiny, full of intricate parts, and obviously designed by someone with a dangerous amount of free time and access to ivory, brass, and too many metaphors. He puts it on a little table near the fire like it's about to do a tap dance. Everyone leans in. He announces that this tiny contraption is not a toy, not an art piece, and not an overpriced Victorian desk ornament. It's a model of a time machine. He explains very seriously that it has two levers. One sends it into the future, the other into the past. And this tiny metal saddle in the middle is where, presumably, a very small Victorian man would sit. The guests are half impressed and half ready to call a magician's hotline to figure out how the trick works. They inspect the device. They eye the table. The time traveler, channeling maximum "I told you so" energy, insists they check everything for wires and mirrors so no one can claim he's pulling some sleight of hand nonsense. Then, for the grand finale, he reaches out to press the lever. But no, wait. Plot twist. He grabs the psychologist's hand and makes him press the lever. Very clever. If this ends in disaster, someone else technically did it. The machine flickers, there's a breeze, a candle goes out, and the little device shimmers like a confused ghost, and then, boom, gone. Just like that, vanished into time. Everyone stares at the empty table like they've just seen a teacup give a TED Talk. Philby, ever the articulate one, simply swears. The psychologist, trying to keep his brain from leaking out his ears, starts crawling under the table. No machine, no trapdoor, no explanation. The time traveler, now full smug mode activated, strolls over to fill his pipe. The rest of the group begins to unravel. The medical man accuses him of joking. The psychologist lights a cigar and forgets to cut it first, which says a lot about how well he's handling reality right now. But the time traveler insists it's real. The machine has gone into time. He doesn't even know if it went forward or backward. But it definitely isn't here anymore. They all start trying to explain it in a way that doesn't make them feel insane. The psychologist claims it must have gone into the past. Someone else points out that if it had gone into the past, they would have seen it in the room when they arrived. The mayor, trying to sound clever, calls this a serious objection, which is a fancy way of saying, "I'm confused but too proud to admit it." The time traveler just smirks and tosses out some techno-babble about presentation below the threshold. meaning the machine is moving so fast through time that your weak human eyes can't perceive it. Like a spinning wheel, or a mosquito with a PhD, totally real but conveniently invisible. The psychologist buys this explanation instantly, probably because it lets him go back to pretending he understands things. He passes his hand through the empty air, laughs, and claims victory over the paradox. They all stare at the table for a bit longer, letting the existential dread wash over them in polite silence. Then the time traveler asks the group what they think. The medical man, in classic skeptical fashion, says it all sounds fine tonight, but wait until tomorrow, when everyone has slept off the wine and returned to their regularly scheduled denial of the impossible. The time traveler then drops the real bomb. That little machine wasn't a trick. It was a prototype. The full-size machine is in his laboratory, nearly finished. And yes, he absolutely intends to use it. The group collectively short-circuits but follows him into the lab anyway. It's dark, drafty, and full of strange shadows, but there it is, a full-size time machine. It's gleaming. It's part crystal, part metal, part Victorian fever dream. It looks real. It looks used. And the room suddenly feels like it's no longer a parlor trick, but something much bigger, much weirder. The medical man, trying to reclaim some shred of authority, asks if this is just another prank, like that ghost story the time traveler told last Christmas. But the time traveler, now lit by the flicker of the lamp and whatever hellish light glows in the eyes of brilliant lunatics, says no. He's going to travel through time, that's the plan, and he has never been more serious in his life. The others don't quite know what to do with that. Philby, bless him, tries to wink, like this is all still just part of a joke. But the joke, my dear human, is starting to look uncomfortably real. Chapter 3. The time traveler returns, or as I like to call it, guess who just stumbled in looking like a time-wrecked cryptid? Let's recap what actually happens in terms your cortex can absorb without a Victorian to English translation dictionary. The week after the whole vanishing toy time machine dinner party, everyone does the classic human thing. Pretend it didn't happen. No one really talks about it. Because obviously, your social species handles radical, reality-shattering events by ignoring them until someone brings wine. No one truly believed the time traveler. He was just one of those unsettlingly clever people. Too clever, really. The kind of guy who makes you suspicious simply by existing. If someone like Philby had shown them a magic time model, they'd believe it instantly, because Philby's brain is made of meatloaf and motives you can smell. But the time traveler? Too smooth. Too confident. Too prone to spontaneously inventing devices that upset people's dinner plans. So we skip to the next Thursday. The narrator shows up late to the time traveler's house in Richmond. He finds a group of men already waiting, some familiar faces, some new skeptical bystanders. The medical man is glancing at his watch, looking annoyed and slightly underfed. The host is nowhere to be seen. They all collectively agree that, well, dinner won't eat itself. The note left by the time traveler says to start without him. Very mysterious. Very ominous. Also very inconvenient. So they eat. About halfway through, the psychologist is trying to explain the whole ingenious paradox from last week, with the enthusiasm of someone explaining cryptocurrency to a houseplant when the door opens. Silently, and there he is. The time traveler, except he looks like hell. His coat is filthy. His hair is wild. His sleeves are covered in green grime like he tried to arm wrestle a fern. His face is pale, haggard, with a nice cut on his chin for extra drama. His socks, yes, socks, are torn and soaked in blood. No shoes, just vibes. Post-apocalyptic, foot-wounded, I've seen things vibes. Everyone stares like someone just summoned the ghost of Christmas future. He limps to the table, says nothing, then makes a beeline for the wine. They pour him champagne, and he downs it like it's the antidote to whatever fresh trauma he's been crawling through. The faintest version of his old smile appears, like it's been sent back in time from a happier facial expression. He murmurs that he's fine, definitely not fine, but fine enough to eat. He says he's starving. Literally starving. He asks someone to save him some mutton, which, by the way, is the most British sentence ever spoken by a man who just limped out of the space-time continuum in bloody socks. He limps away to clean up and change clothes. The rest of the dinner guests sit there like, what just happened? The editor, who thinks in news headlines, immediately starts writing one in his head. Distinguished scientist returns looking like footage from a war zone. They speculate. They joke. Some think he's pulling some elaborate prank. The psychologist and the narrator, though, exchange a look. They saw that limp. They saw that face. This wasn't a prank. Something happened. Dinner resumes. Uncomfortable small talk fills the air like bad perfume. Jokes are cracked. Paradoxes are mocked. The usual defense mechanism. Everyone is trying very hard to pretend things are normal, even as their host is upstairs possibly scrubbing dried blood and existential despair off his kneecaps. Finally, the time traveler returns. He's cleaned up, dressed in evening clothes, looking almost himself again, except for the hollow look in his eyes that says, "I just saw civilization collapse at least twice." The editor cracks another joke. "So, have you been to the middle of next week? Got any stock tips?" The time traveler says nothing, just smiles faintly, asks for mutton again, says eating meat is a treat, which is a weird sentence unless you've recently been eating bugs, moss, or regret. Everyone starts pressing him for a story, but he waves them off. He needs food first, real food. Then, and only then, will he explain. Eventually fed and slightly rehydrated, he invites everyone into the smoking room. He doesn't want interruptions. He doesn't want skepticism. He just wants to tell the story. And oh, what a story it is. He says it's going to sound like he's lying, but it's true, every word. He left at 4 o'clock, and from that moment on, he lived 8 days. Not just normal days, but the kind of days no human has ever lived before. He won't sleep until he tells it. He needs to tell it. It's eating him from the inside out. Everyone agrees to shut up and listen. He sits back in his chair, his face lit only by a lamp, the rest of the room falling into shadow. He begins to speak, tired but driven. And the story he's about to tell will pull them into the wildest, most disturbing, most human tale in all of time. And that's how Chapter 3 ends, not with a bang, but with a plate of mutton and a man who looks like he's aged a century in 7 days. Chapter 5, In the Golden Age. Or as HUMNOID42 prefers to call it, welcome to the future. Please remove all expectations and also your shoes. So the time traveler finally arrives in the far future. Year? 800-2701. Vibe. Garden-themed fever dream curated by people who look like porcelain dolls and act like mildly distracted toddlers on flower-based sedatives. The very first creature he meets walks straight up to him and laughs. Not with fear or confusion, just like, "Oh, cool, a sweaty, overdressed Victorian guy just popped out of a lawn sculpture." No panic, just giggles and vibes. The time traveler instantly notices something weird. None of them are scared of him. This is suspicious. Most people in his own century would scream if someone showed up in a weird machine covered in future pollen. But these little humans just start petting him, like he's a rescue dog. A small crowd gathers. They all look like expensive glass figurines. Pretty, frail, soft voices, mild smiles, like sentient cupcakes. One of them tries to talk to him in their strange, sugary language. He doesn't understand a thing, so he tries to mime it out. The old, point to ears, shake head, universal sign of "I'm too stupid to understand you" routine. It works. Kind of. They seem amused. Then he sees them touching the time machine and suddenly remembers, oh right, this thing can disappear into the time stream forever if someone sneezes on the wrong lever. He rushes over, unscrews the control handles, and pockets them. A very wise move for someone who just met a species that looks like it couldn't keep a cactus alive. As he studies them more closely, the time traveler starts to notice some odd details. All of them have the exact same curly hair, perfectly smooth faces, comically tiny ears, and big glassy eyes. Their mouths are small, and their chins come to unsettling little points, like someone tried to carve them out of fondant. It's not just their looks that disturb him, though. It's the blankness. They're curious, but not interested. There's a difference. They seem emotionally undercooked, like someone removed their ability to worry about anything more complex than whether they're out of flower necklaces. He tries to communicate by pointing to the machine and then to himself, then points dramatically at the sun, as if trying to say, I came from there. Respect me. One of them responds by mimicking a thunderclap, which is both adorable and insulting. That's when it hits him. These creatures might be idiots. And not just, oh, they have a different culture kind of idiots. We're talking full-on baby-proofed society level. He came expecting a future of super genius science gods. What he found instead is a race of vegetarian elf children who would lose a debate to a banana. One of them then gives him a necklace of bizarre future flowers. The rest of them pile on. Suddenly he's being flower-bombed by a giggling mob of futuristic cherubs. It's equal parts charming and mildly terrifying. He's starting to feel like the new class pet. Then they decide to parade him around, their new exotic meat-based mascot, and take him to a building. On the way, they pass a huge white marble sphinx that appears to be watching him, like, creepily, like it knows what's up. Classic cursed statue behavior. He takes mental note of it. You, reader, also take note, because foreshadowing. They bring him into a massive building with broken stained glass, dusty curtains, and crumbling architecture that looks like it's been through a few centuries of "we'll fix it later." Inside, they all sit on cushions around low tables made of polished stone and begin absolutely devouring fruit. This is their diet, all fruit, all day, every day. He's hungry enough to join in, even if he suspects one of the fruits might be sentient. They throw the peels into holes in the tables, laugh like kindergartners on a sugar high, and stare at him like he's the halftime show. He tries not to judge, but between the broken windows, the dusty decor, and the fact that everyone's using the same 3 brain cells on rotation, he starts to feel the creeping dread of civilizational decline. Also, no meat, no animals, no dogs, no cows, no horses. No sign of any living creature other than these soft-focus humans and some aggressively well-bred plant life. Apparently, the only surviving mammal is him. Once he's eaten, he decides to start learning the language. He points to fruit, makes sounds, gets laughed at a lot. Eventually, one of the little creatures pities him and gives him a word. The rest get bored. He realizes these people have 0 attention span, get tired easily, and aren't really interested in anything unless it smells like nectar. They're like very polite zombies who've replaced brains with botanical trivia. He does manage to pick up a few nouns, a couple of pronouns, and even the word for eat. But it's slow going. They're too lazy to teach him properly, and frankly too delicate to handle any form of effort that isn't part of a flower chain ceremony. And so ends his first proper day in the distant future. Confused, flower-covered, mildly malnourished, surrounded by giggling idiots in robes, and already suspicious that something is very wrong. Because this isn't a utopia. It's a weird, smiling dream. And dreams have a habit of turning into nightmares. Chapter 6. The Sunset of Mankind. Or in HUMNOID42 terms, congratulations, you played yourself. Humanity's retirement plan was eternal mediocrity. South. The time traveler has been in the year 800,2701 for, what, an afternoon? And already he's picked up on something truly unsettling. These adorable little flower sprites, his future descendants, have the attention span of a toddler in a room full of shiny objects. They get excited about him, poke him like a new toy, giggle, then immediately wander off to go smell a leaf or whatever else counts as entertainment in their pastel utopia. At first, it's cute. Then it's annoying. Then it's disturbing. After dinner with the Eloi, that's what these shiny people are called. He hasn't named them that yet, but we'll get there. The time traveler goes outside to explore this weirdly beautiful, suspiciously calm future. He realizes that although everything is gorgeous and floral and Instagrammable, there's something broken beneath the surface. The buildings are magnificent but crumbling. The gardens are vast but strangely untamed. It's like wandering through the ruins of a perfect society that forgot how to do upkeep. He heads up a hill to get a better look at this future Earth. The Thames is still there, but it's drifted off course. Like all of humanity, apparently. Along the way, he finds ruins, big ones. Collapsed buildings made of granite and aluminum, overgrown with beautifully mutated plants that look like nettles but aren't even mean enough to sting. He starts noticing other strange things. There are no houses, no individual homes, no little cottages, just occasional giant palace-like structures. The concept of private property seems to have dissolved. This, he assumes, means communism, because of course. And then, as he observes the Eloi more carefully, he notices something else. There's no difference between the men and the women. Same clothes, same faces, same softly rounded limbs. It's like someone copy-pasted one body template and then gave up halfway through the character creator. He figures in a society with no conflict, no predators, no need for protection or hard labor, the biological distinctions between the sexes simply faded. Without war, without hardship, without risk, you don't need big muscles or aggressive hormones or parental instincts. You just need to look pretty, eat fruit, and vibe. It's dystopia by way of spa brochure. Then he passes what looks like a well with a decorative cover. He doesn't think much of it, which is funny because those wells are going to matter very, very soon. But for now, he keeps hiking, marveling at the peaceful emptiness around him. He climbs to the top of a hill and finds a moss-covered metal bench, shaped like it was designed by a fantasy blacksmith. He sits, takes in the view, and starts theorizing. This is where he gives us his first big wrong theory. He looks out at the sunset, the ruins, the docile Eloi, and concludes that humanity has simply reached the end of its arc. That this floral daydream of a world is what happens when civilization wins. Total victory over nature. No disease, no pain, no hunger, no struggle, and as a result, no strength, no ambition, and no brains. Basically, he thinks we made the world too safe. We made it so soft that we evolved into sentient marshmallows. He figures humanity, through science and social reform, gradually eliminated everything that used to kill us. Disease, war, predators, hard labor. and what's left is a pampered species that spent thousands of years forgetting how to do anything useful. The Eloi are the end product of perfect civilization. They are art without meaning, beauty without purpose, existence without tension. They don't build. They don't farm. They don't fix things. They just exist. And that makes them, in a way, the most tragic thing he's ever seen. He even starts connecting this to trends in his own time. How we're already breeding more decorative plants, favoring easier lives, eliminating disease, encouraging comfort over challenge. He sees that process taken to its ultimate ridiculous conclusion. No predators, you stop needing strength. No hardship, you lose drive. No families, you lose emotion. No conflict, you lose thought. And then he hits the kicker. After the battle comes quiet. The moment you win everything, you start to rot. Art becomes decoration. Passion becomes indulgence. Culture becomes a picnic. Even art itself is dying in this world. The only remaining form of creativity is putting flowers on people, and maybe humming a song if the mood strikes. It's less Renaissance and more flower girl with ADHD. The time traveler thinks at this point that he's solved the mystery, that he's cracked the code. Humanity has conquered nature, and in doing so, neutered itself. He sits there, watching the last light fade over this strange, decayed paradise, convinced that this is it. This is the final stage of mankind. And it's not war, it's not apocalypse, it's eternal comfort. A world so safe, so easy, so passive. It has nothing left to live for. Of course, this is all just speculation. And if you've been paying attention, you know by now that the time traveler's theories are usually elegant, plausible, and deeply, hilariously wrong. Because this isn't the end of the story. It's just the end of the illusion. And something else is waiting beneath the surface. Literally. Chapter 7. A Sudden Shock. Or as HUMNOID42 would file it, "So you invented time travel, parked it like an idiot, and now you're screwed." The time traveler, still coasting on his smug little theory that humanity just kind of relaxed itself into fruit-loving mediocrity, is enjoying a quiet moonlit evening when, surprise, everything falls apart. He looks down from the hilltop and sees the white sphinx again, moonlight gleaming off its creepy, leprous face. There's the birch tree, the bushes, the lawn. But where's the time machine? Cue stomach drop. Cue instant existential panic. At first he tries denial, telling himself the machine's probably just been nudged under the bushes. Very normal. Happens all the time with priceless experimental technology. But his gut knows it's gone. And with that realization, so is any sense of control. In a full-blown panic, he bolts down the hill, running like a man possessed, face planting along the way and bleeding from the impact. No time to fix it. He's sprinting, wild-eyed, babbling, convincing himself the machine's just been tucked away neatly by the Eloi, maybe to keep it dry, maybe to help out. But deep down, he knows. Someone or something has taken it. He reaches the lawn. Nothing. No tracks, no comforting mechanical hum. Just mocking silence and that giant sphinx looming overhead, its bronze pedestal now looking far more ominous than decorative. It's as if it's smirking at him. Honestly, if you ever find yourself being mocked by a statue, something's gone very wrong with your day. He searches frantically through the bushes like a man trying to find his lost keys. Except the keys are a machine that controls space-time. He ends up at the palace building, stumbling in the dark. scaring the Eloi out of their naps by charging in like a madman with a match and a meltdown. He shakes them, screams, demands answers. None are forthcoming. Some laugh, most panic, and all of them stare at him like he's a loud, dangerous toddler that wandered into their flower fort. He realizes that whatever fear is, these beings have no muscle memory for it. They don't get danger. They don't get urgency. He's a problem they don't have the code to process. His frenzy builds. He tears through the ruins, howling, searching, breaking his knuckles on twigs, probably scaring the local wildlife and mentally drafting his angry memoir. Trapped in the future, my journey from genius to idiot in 800,000 years. Eventually, broken, exhausted, humiliated, he collapses near the Sphinx and sobs himself to sleep under its grotesque gaze. Good times. He wakes at dawn, birds hopping near him like they're debating whether he's food. Daylight brings reason. He pulls himself together, still horrified, but now working through the situation with the cold, bitter efficiency of a man who's just realized the future is not user-friendly. He knows the machine hasn't traveled through time because the control levers are in his pocket. So it's been moved, hidden, by someone. And if it wasn't the Eloi, and let's be honest, they're barely qualified to tie their own shoes, then who? He examines the ground, finds drag marks, unusual narrow footprints, claw-like. Nothing the Eloi could have made. Something else has been here. Something else has been watching. He turns his attention to the pedestal of the Sphinx, which he now realizes is hollow. Decorative panels. No seams, no handles. Probably a hidden door. He bangs on it, hammers it with a rock. Does everything short of begging it to open. No response. Except he thinks he hears a chuckle from inside. Yep. The Sphinx is laughing at him now. Not metaphorically. Literally. He tries to get help from the Eloi. Tries gestures. Tries looking sad. Tries brute force. Grabs one by the robe and drags him toward the pedestal like a time-traveling Karen demanding to speak to the manager of the Sphinx. The reaction is not great. Utter revulsion. Like he just asked them to perform brain surgery with a spoon. They look at him as if he's done something completely unthinkable. They flee. He's left feeling ashamed, confused, furious. He keeps pounding the bronze, keeps hammering, keeps yelling. He sees them watching from a distance, whispering, avoiding him. And then something even worse hits him. They're starting to avoid him entirely. The future flower children, once so touchy and curious, now steer clear of the wild-eyed time traveler who screams at statues and throws rocks at doors. And frankly, fair. So he decides, play it cool, blend in, learn their ways, bide his time, play the long con. Maybe someday they'll trust him again, or at least get careless enough to let something slip. He keeps exploring, learning their language, such as it is, which is, unsurprisingly, made up almost entirely of nouns and verbs. Simple, literal, dull. They have no metaphor, no abstraction, no poetry. It's like talking to someone who only knows emoji. So he tucks his grief into a corner of his mind and tries to focus on understanding this world. But he can't help feeling tethered, stuck in a loop, circling the same few miles, always watching the pedestal, always listening for something that might be breathing beneath the bronze. Because now he knows there's something else here, something underneath the surface. And this future isn't just soft and sweet, it's hiding something. And whatever it is, it has his time machine. Want to follow him down into the dark next? We're not in spa land anymore. Things are about to get more locky. Chapter 8. Explanation. Or, as HUMNOID42 would title it, Capitalism but make it evolutionary horror. So after his little brush with total despair and a night full of weird ape shadow sightings, the time traveler sobers up and starts thinking like a scientist again. He decides it's time to make sense of the surreal, decaying botanical wonderland he's landed in. And right away, he starts noticing some very suspicious patterns. First, everything looks perfect. Too perfect. The flowers are flawless. The weather is suspiciously warm. There are no pests, no rot, no aging, no illness, no cemeteries, not even a decent garbage dump. It's like nature got a PR team and airbrushed the entire planet. But there's one glaring problem. Nothing seems to be maintained. These beautiful structures, giant palaces, stunning halls, aren't just empty. They're falling apart. The little people, the Eloi, don't build, don't clean, don't fix. They eat fruit, swim, nap in piles, and act like mildly stoned toddlers in silk robes. And yet, somehow everything still works. Their clothes are always fresh. Their food is endless. Their lives seem supported by invisible machinery no one understands or controls. It's like someone left the planet on autopilot and forgot to come back. And then there are the wells. Creepy, deep, bronze-rimmed shafts scattered across the landscape, often with little towers nearby. No water. Just wind. A steady, unnatural thud, thud, thud from deep below. And the kicker? Anything dropped in gets sucked down. Hard. That's not a well. That's a ventilation shaft for something very big, very mechanical, and very underground. So the time traveler, finally acting like the brilliant mind he claims to be, starts connecting dots. Something is going on beneath this lovely lobotomized paradise. And then comes Weena. She's one of the Eloi. She almost drowns in a shallow river while her friends just stand there watching, too disinterested or too helpless to do anything. He rescues her, mildly disgusted by how useless they are. But Weena attaches to him like a lost puppy. She brings him flowers. She kisses his hands. She clings to him like he's a one-man daycare. He tolerates it at first, seeing it as cute and kind of pathetic. But over time, her affection starts to mean something. She's not just a childlike burden. She's the only emotional anchor he has in this dream world turned fever dream. And then she reveals something important. She's afraid of the dark. Not like a little jumpy when the lights go out. Afraid. Terrified. All of the Eloi are. As soon as the sun sets, they huddle together like scared animals. They never sleep alone. They never go outside. And if you walk among them in the dark with no light, they panic. It's more than fear. It's trauma. An ancient fear passed down like folklore their brains forgot how to explain. But the time traveler, in true oblivious academic fashion, ignores the warning signs and sleeps outside anyway. That is, until the eyes. He wakes one night before dawn. He thinks he sees movement, white figures hunched and fast climbing the hill. He sees them carrying something, or someone. But the light is too dim, the shadows too thick. His mind scrambles to rationalize it. Maybe they were ghosts. Maybe it was a weird dream. Maybe it was indigestion. Spoiler, it wasn't. He keeps exploring and ends up deep inside some ruins. It's pitch dark. He lights a match, and that's when he sees them for real. The Morlocks. A pair of pale, reflective eyes staring at him from the black. Then a creature, white, hunched, ape-like, bolts past him into the sunlight and vanishes. It's not just scary, it's wrong. Something about it triggers every primal instinct he has. It looks human. Too human. But warped. Rotten. like someone left a caveman in a cave for too long and forgot to update the firmware. He finds one of those weird wells, looks down, lights another match, and there it is. The creature is crawling down the wall like a human spider, using metal handholds. It stares back up at him with huge, unblinking eyes. And this is the moment it all clicks. Humanity didn't just evolve into the Eloi, it split. There's a whole second species living underground, the Morlocks, nocturnal, pale, feral, covered in fine hair, sensitive to light, and clearly at home in the dark industrial underbelly of the world. That ventilation system he'd been admiring, it's their infrastructure. Suddenly, his perfect little Eden isn't so perfect. The Eloi aren't just harmless flower pickers. They're livestock, pets. The Morlocks are the real workers of this world, the ones who maintain the machines, who keep things running, who provide for the Eloi's comfort, for reasons that are not, shall we say, entirely altruistic. And if you're wondering why the time machine is gone, let's just say the Eloi didn't take it. And the Morlocks don't strike him as the type to just borrow it for a joyride. So the time traveler forms a new theory, his bleakest yet. Long ago, the social divide between rich and poor widened so much that it became permanent. The rich went up, built their paradise, and forgot how to survive. The poor went down, underground, became something else. The Eloi became soft, weak, directionless. The Morlocks became hard, cruel, and necessary. Civilization didn't collapse, it mutated into a system where the surface lives in ignorance and light, and the depths work in darkness and feed. The time traveler doesn't know the full truth yet, but it's starting to sink in. The paradise is a trap. The Eloi are afraid of the dark for a reason. And his only way home is somewhere down there, in the hands of the Morlocks. Welcome to the horror half of the time travel vacation package. Shall we continue into the underworld? Chapter 9. The Morlocks. Or as I like to call it, welcome to the industrial meat locker at the bottom of Utopia. So, the time traveler has finally worked up the courage to do what he's been putting off for days, descend into the future's literal underworld. He's been tiptoeing around the wells like they're cursed toilets, but now, driven by fear, necessity, and maybe a dash of toxic curiosity, he chooses the moment. He says goodbye to Weena, who is understandably horrified, and then lowers himself into the dark, Morlock-infested shaft like a Victorian action hero with no flashlight and very poor planning skills. What follows is, predictably, a nightmare cave descent with bonus existential dread. It's cramped, slick, freezing, and smells like mechanized despair. He nearly dies halfway down when one of the bars bends under his weight. Because, surprise, it wasn't built for tall, spindly 19th century time tourists. He finally finds a narrow side tunnel and collapses into it, aching, panicked, and cursing his past self for not packing literally anything useful. No weapon, no torch, not even tobacco. Truly, he is humanity's best and brightest. While recovering in the dark, he suddenly feels a hand on his face. He lights a match. 3 Morlocks are crouched near him, looking like pallid jellyfish wearing Victorian wigs. They recoil instantly from the flame. They're blind in the light, sensitive like moles, but clearly intelligent. They're not afraid of him, just of the fire. And they don't run far. They skitter off into the shadows, and then keep watching. He starts crawling through their tunnels like a blind mole rat in a tweed jacket, and eventually reaches a huge cavern filled with machinery, Morlocks, and, let's just call it what it is, a cannibal dinner table. There's a white metal slab. There's something red and juicy on it. The Morlocks are carnivores. And now he's wondering what exactly their meat source is, considering there aren't any cows or chickens left. Unsettling pause. He realizes with dawning horror. The Eloi aren't just helpless children, they are livestock. He's standing in the future's abattoir, surrounded by its night shift workers. And, just as he's processing this, his last few matches start to dwindle. Brilliant man. He used up most of them earlier, trying to impress the Eloi like a 19th century party magician. Look, Wiener, fire. And now he's deep in the belly of the beast with 4 matches and no backup plan. When he lights one, the Morlocks panic. When it goes out, they come back. They touch him, they whisper. They start tugging at his clothes, gently pulling at his face, trying to take the matchbox from his hand. It's like being examined by a very polite swarm of spiders that might eat you later. He panics, lights another match, yells, tries to escape. They start laughing. It's not a fun laugh. It's a, you're still down here meatbag laugh. He barely scrambles back through the tunnel, pursued by their whispery movements and pale hands, like the world's most horrifying ASMR experience. As he reaches the vertical shaft, they grab his feet. He lights his last match, which of course immediately goes out, because that's how match-based suspense works. Fortunately, he's already on the climbing bars. Kicking wildly, he tears himself free and hauls himself back up. One Morlock follows him, like some horrible future-fanged koala, but it doesn't get far. He escapes, collapses into the sunlight, and is promptly smothered by Wiener's love and a crowd of Eloi who have no idea what he just endured. He passes out. This chapter is the point of no return. The time traveler's hopeful theories about a soft utopia are dead. His sanitized vision of the future has been gutted, literally. He's seen the Morlock's machines, smelled the blood, felt the eager hands on his skin. He now knows this world runs on a dark, unspoken economic horror show. Beauty above, industry below. Comfort, bought with flesh. And worst of all, the time machine is still missing. And the only ones who can give it back are probably saving it for dessert. Ready for Chapter 10? Weena's still here. But we're about to find out she's not just a sidekick. She's a casualty. Chapter 10. When Night Came. Or if we're being honest, the moon is dying, you're being hunted, and everything you love might be food. So the time traveler, after his casual little journey into cannibalism-powered underground horror, is back in the sunlit, flower-scented top world. But something has changed. He's no longer an explorer of curiosities. He's prey. And night is no longer just inconvenient, it's a countdown. At first, he was annoyed by the Eloi's helplessness, then baffled, then protective. But now he's afraid. And it's not just fear of the dark, it's fear of what lives in the dark. And worse, what the dark is becoming. Thanks to Weena, he learns about the dark nights, the moonless nights when even the Eloi, creatures of daytime fluff and uselessness, start to shiver. This isn't just bedtime. This is feeding time. The Morlocks, he now realizes, aren't just some creepy maintenance crew. They're the apex predators of this future. Humanity's underclass, banished underground, made inhuman by generations of exploitation, have turned into the inheritors of the earth. The Eloi, they're not the rulers anymore. They're kept, clothed, fed, and bred like animals in a free-range nightmare. Their fear of the dark isn't irrational, it's genetic memory. And now the time traveler understands the meat on that table underground. And even though he doesn't want to believe it, even though he tries to mentally distance himself, he knows. So what does he do? He starts making plans. Very 19th century stiff upper lip, pass me a wrench and a monologue sort of plans. He decides to find a secure place to sleep, a fortress, some kind of future-safe Airbnb where the Morlocks can't reach him in the dark. Also, he needs a weapon because being clever won't help when you're surrounded by subterranean albino carnivores with grabby hands. This brings him to the Palace of Green Porcelain, a strange, possibly museum-like structure he saw in the distance days ago but kept avoiding. He decides this is his new objective. A place that looks sturdy, remote, and maybe full of the useful junk that former civilizations leave lying around for time travelers to loot. He sets off toward it with Weena, who is still basically clinging to him like a tiny, terrified emoji. She runs beside him, picking flowers and stuffing them in his pockets. Her version of emotional support. He lets her. Honestly, at this point, it's the only normal thing left in the world. As they walk, he begins to feel something beneath his feet, like the world is hollow. He imagines the Morlocks swarming below like white ants in a hive, waiting for darkness, waiting for him. He's no longer just exploring, he's trespassing. And he starts to wonder, what if they consider his foray underground an act of war? He carries Weena when she tires. She wraps her arms around his neck and buries her face in his shoulder. It's tender. It's heartbreaking. And it's also horrifying, because he knows she's not going to make it. They stop for the night on a hilltop, just outside a dense, menacing forest. He's too tired, too wounded, and honestly, too human to push on. So he wraps her in his jacket, stays awake beside her, and watches the sky for the moon. For them. And now comes the existential crisis portion of the evening. He looks at the stars, totally different constellations than his own time. Everything he knew, everything humanity built, gone. Languages, cities, literature, art, all wiped out. The only surviving relics of mankind are a race of fanged troglodytes and a bunch of helpless fruit nymphs. He's traveled 800,000 years to find out that progress was not a straight line. It was a spiral into two dead ends. He thinks about that meat again, about the alloy, about Weena, and he realizes with cold certainty she is food. They all are. These bright, laughing, clueless creatures aren't spared because they're loved. They're spared because they're stalked, and he can't romanticize it anymore. This isn't karma. This isn't an allegory. This is just the logical outcome of power with no empathy. When morning comes, the fear recedes. The woods are green again. Weena wakes. The Eloi reappear, dancing in the sun like nothing ever happened. But something did. Something is happening all the time, just beneath the surface. And the time traveler knows it now. So he prepares. He needs fire. He needs tools. He needs a plan to break into the pedestal beneath the Sphinx, where he believes the Morlocks have hidden his time machine. He's going to fight his way home, and he's going to take Weena with him. But even as he schemes and steels himself, he knows the next night is coming. The moon will vanish, and the Morlocks will return. Chapter 10 ends on that breath before the plunge, his humanity intact, but his hope bruised. Ready for Chapter 11? Spoiler, the Palace of Green Porcelain has everything, including a future museum and something sharp. Chapter 11, The Palace of Green Porcelain. Or, History's Museum, Morlock Defense Depot, and Emotional Support Dance Hall. The time traveler and Weena reach the Palace of Green Porcelain around noon. It's massive, eerily quiet, and clearly collapsing. The place is in ruins, its green-tiled surface flaking off in patches like diseased skin, and whatever proud architectural skeleton once supported it now seems to be sagging under the weight of time. The windows are shattered, the frame is rusted, and the whole thing looks like a fossilized museum exhibit that forgot to die properly. From a high point near the structure, he sees a strange estuary where London used to be. The seas have shifted, the land has softened, and somewhere in the depths of that water, he imagines, strange things might still be living. But he doesn't dwell on that. There's enough horror on land. The building itself really is porcelain. Along its faded facade, he notices an inscription in a language that even Weena doesn't recognize. It becomes obvious she has no concept of writing at all. She doesn't understand language as a tool of record, only as a thing to smile through. Her affection makes her seem human, but in many ways she isn't. Her mind is too empty of history. They pass through a pair of broken doors and enter what looks like a long gallery. At first glance, it reminds him of a museum. Thick dust blankets everything, and strange, hollowed shapes loom up from it like ghosts. In the center of the space stands the bottom half of a giant skeleton, the bones cracked and weathered. He recognizes the remains as a megatherium, but it's half eroded by rain leaking through the ceiling. Further in, he spots the massive barrel-shaped ribs of a brontosaurus. The gallery confirms his guess. This was once a museum, ancient, abandoned, but still recognizably built by the descendants of his time. Glass display cases remain, some astonishingly intact. The fossils are still visible inside a few of them. Occasionally he finds evidence that the little people have wandered through before him. Broken bits of skeleton, fossils strung together like beads. Some of the cases have been taken entirely. He assumes, with growing suspicion, that the Morlocks have done this. The silence in the place is deep and oppressive, broken only by Weena's soft footsteps and his own. He's stunned by it all, not afraid, not yet, just struck by the ghostly echo of a world that once thrived. His thoughts about the time machine fade for a moment as he walks among the ruins of human ambition. He explores further. In one corridor he finds a gallery of minerals. A block of sulfur catches his eye and triggers thoughts of gunpowder, though he quickly realizes there's no saltpeter or nitrates left. They must have evaporated or crumbled into uselessness over the centuries. Still, he pockets the sulfur, a seed of hope forming. He continues on through the wreckage. In another gallery, he finds what may have once been a collection of preserved animals and plants, but now it's just piles of brown dust and mummified decay. Nothing is left that would tell the story of how nature was finally conquered. In a deeper section, a gallery of machines draws his attention. Huge, rusted mechanisms loom in the gloom, some still upright, others collapsed and broken. The floor beneath them slopes downward, but he's too fascinated by the mystery of the machines to notice. Weena suddenly clutches his arm. Her fear draws his attention to the darkness at the end of the corridor. The dust on the floor is disturbed, scattered with narrow footprints. That same unnatural sound he heard in the wells begins to echo from the shadows. He grips Weena's hand tighter and turns back toward one of the machines. There's a lever sticking out thick and heavy. He climbs up and uses his full strength to snap it free. It becomes a makeshift weapon, an iron club, solid enough to smash through bone. He returns to Weena, holding his new weapon with grim satisfaction, and suppresses the rising desire to storm into the dark and kill whatever is waiting. Instead, he moves on to another gallery. This one is vast, with hanging tatters that at first look like faded banners. But as he examines them, he realizes they are the decaying remnants of books. They crumble at a touch. The print has long since disappeared, and the pages are little more than ash, held together by habit. Metal clasps and warped boards are all that remain. The sight overwhelms him. So much knowledge lost. All those efforts, all those words reduced to dust. He pushes on and finds a chemistry section. Much of it is ruined, but one case remains sealed. Inside, he finds a box of matches. He tries one. It lights. They're dry, untouched by time. The joy he feels is ridiculous, explosive. He shouts and then breaks into a spontaneous dance right there in the dust. Weena watches with delight, not understanding, but completely amused. For the first time since arriving in this future, he feels a surge of power. He has fire. In another case, he finds a sealed jar of camphor. He mistakes it for wax at first, but the sharp scent gives it away. It's volatile, perfect for flame. He pockets it carefully. It might save their lives. No gunpowder, no crowbars, but now he has light. And light, he knows, is the one thing the Morlocks cannot face. He continues through the afternoon, collecting whatever might help him survive. In one gallery, he finds a wall of weapons, nearly all rusted beyond recognition. There are rifles, swords, pistols, nothing functional. In another place, he finds what looks like the remnants of an explosion, maybe a failed experiment. He finds 2 sticks of dynamite, celebrates prematurely, and then waits. Nothing. They're dummies. His brief fantasy of blowing open the Sphinx pedestal vanishes. Near sunset, he and Weena find a small courtyard inside the palace. It has 3 fruit trees and a patch of turf. They rest. He begins to plan the night. No more wandering in the dark. They will sleep by a fire. He has matches. He has camphor. He has an iron mace. And now he has a plan. Tomorrow, he will go to the White Sphinx and break open the bronze doors. The time machine must be there. He will fight his way home if he has to. And he will bring Weena with him. Chapter 12. In the Darkness. Or the fire, the forest, and the end of Weena. The time traveler leaves the palace of green porcelain with his prize, a box of matches, a pocket of camphor, a solid iron club, and with Weena by his side. He intends to reach the White Sphinx by the next morning. There's one last obstacle, a forest, the same one he'd avoided before. This time he pushes on. He gathers sticks and grass along the way, planning to build a fire for protection. But the burden slows them. Weena is tired. He is beyond tired. He hasn't slept in 2 days, and the edges of his consciousness are beginning to fray. Night falls before they reach the forest's edge. Weena is afraid. He is too. Among the black bushes behind them, he sees 3 crouching figures, pale shapes watching. Morlocks. They are being followed. He abandons the firewood he gathered, reluctantly. Then, with the bizarre logic of the exhausted, he lights it anyway. His thinking, if you can call it that, is that a burning pile of sticks might confuse or distract whatever's behind them. And it does, spectacularly. The fire spreads quickly, licking into the brush. Weena, who has never seen flame before, is fascinated. She would have run into it had he not held her back. He carries her into the forest. It is dark. The fire behind them casts an unsteady glow between the trees. The rest is black. He carries her in one arm, his iron bar in the other. His eyes adjust slowly. Overhead, the trees block out the stars. The only sounds are his own footsteps, his breath, the faint rustle of leaves. Then, something begins to follow. Pattering footsteps. Familiar whispers. The same cooing noises from the underworld. Morlocks are closing in. He puts Weena down to light a match. Instantly, hands are on him. Silent hands, soft and searching. They claw at his coat, his neck. Weena lies at his feet, motionless. He strikes the match. The sudden flare reveals pale backs vanishing into the trees. He lights the camphor and throws it. The blaze drives the creatures away. He lifts Weena. She has fainted. She doesn't respond. And now, worse than fear, comes the realization. He's turned himself around. He has no idea which direction he's facing. The way out of the forest is gone. He builds a fire where they are. The Morlocks watch from the shadows. Their eyes glint like coals circling. When his match flickers out, they come closer. He punches one and hears its bones snap. He lights another piece of camphor and keeps collecting wood. He drags down branches, building a smoky, choking fire from green wood and dry sticks. Weena doesn't wake. He sits beside her, dizzy. Smoke curls around him. The camphor fumes cloud his head. The forest murmurs in the dark. At some point, he falls asleep. When he wakes, the Morlocks are on him. He scrambles, reaching for his matches, but they're gone. His pockets are empty. They've been taken while he slept. The fire is out. Cold fingers clutch his throat, his arms, his hair. He's pulled down. He feels teeth. The forest echoes with the whispers and laughter of things that used to be human. But then his hand finds the iron bar. He fights. The bar hits flesh. He hears bones crack. He breaks free. He swings wildly, blindly. His back finds a tree. He plants his feet. Morlocks surround him, but they don't approach. Not yet. They're waiting. Then the forest begins to glow. A spark drifts across the trees. The fire he started earlier has caught up with them. It spreads like a red wave through the blackness. Flames leap from tree to tree. Smoke roars. And the Morlocks panic. They run. They flee in every direction, red-lit and helpless in the firelight. He turns to find Weena, but she's gone. He runs after the fleeing Morlocks, barely ahead of the fire. The trees burst into flame around him. One of the creatures stumbles past him and into the blaze. Another staggers blindly, moaning, arms raised to the heat. A circle of fire closes around a clearing. In the center, dozens of Morlocks are trapped, dazed, blind, staggering in confusion. He strikes one, then stops. He sees their terror. They are helpless in the light. He watches them crash into one another, burning or hiding from the fire they cannot face. He looks for Weena again. Nothing. The fire is too fast. The smoke too thick. There is no time to mourn. There isn't even time to think. He retreats to the hilltop in the center of the inferno. There, amid the choking black and red, he watches the Morlocks die. Some wander into the flames, some fall, some simply tremble and wait. He tries to wake himself, tries to believe this is a nightmare. He bites his arm, hits the ground. He calls out to God. He stares up at the unfamiliar sky through gaps in the smoke and sees the stars. They're wrong. Even now they're wrong. Nothing is familiar. Not even the sky. When morning comes, the fire has passed. The forest is reduced to ashes and black stumps. The Morlocks are gone or dead. Weena is nowhere. He searches but finds no sign, no body, nothing, just emptiness. He tells himself this is better. That she escaped what might have happened if they had taken her alive. It is the only comfort left. He limps away, alone again, towards the white sphinx. His feet are wrapped in grass. He walks over the still warm ashes, holding his iron bar, smoke rising behind him. The sky is clean, the day bright. The palace glimmers in the distance. He has no fire, no companion, no plan. But somewhere under the Sphinx, his time machine waits, and now nothing will stop him from reaching it. Chapter 13. The Trap of the White Sphinx. Or, The Morlocks try a classic ambush, and the time traveler says, "Not today." The time traveler begins his morning by returning to the same yellow metal bench, where on the day of his arrival, he had sat and marveled at the serene beauty of the distant future. Now, after everything he's seen, he laughs bitterly at his first impressions. The world still looks lovely on the surface. Lush trees, bright robes, soft ruins, a silver river winding peacefully through the green. But now he knows exactly what lies beneath. It's not a paradise. It's a carefully maintained illusion. The Eloi are not the heirs of humanity. They're its leftovers. They live like cattle and die like cattle. That's the truth beneath the garden. He thinks of Weena. He sees the place where he once saved her from drowning. Now that memory is a wound. Her absence is too raw, too sharp to ignore. He grieves, not just for her, but for what mankind became. The great climb of thought, invention, and civilization ended in helplessness above and horror below. He sits in the sun and allows himself to rest. All his theories about society, evolution, and decay swirl through his head. He considers the Eloi and the Morlocks as the twin fates of humanity. One clinging to comfort until all meaning drained away. The other driven underground until it forgot the sun entirely. The dream of a perfect society did not end in harmony. It ended in a silent, complacent collapse. He dozes on the grass in the warmth of the sun. He doesn't intend to, but sleep takes him. When he wakes, the sun is setting. His sense of purpose returns. It is time to go to the White Sphinx. This is it. He is ready. With his crowbar in one hand and the matches in the other, he descends toward the statue. Something strange has happened. The bronze doors at the base of the pedestal, the ones that were shut tight before, are now open. This should feel like a victory. It doesn't. It feels like a trick. He steps cautiously toward the opening. Inside is a small room, and on a raised platform sits the time machine. It is not only intact, but seems to have been cleaned and polished. The Morlocks, he suspects, have been studying it, trying to understand it, perhaps even trying to use it. He walks toward it slowly. The levers he needs to operate the machine are in his pocket. He has them. He has everything he needs. And then, in an instant, the trap is sprung. The bronze doors slam shut behind him. He is sealed in the dark. He laughs. Of course they would try this. It's almost predictable. But now he's inside, and they're coming. He hears them, their cooing, giggling chatter, the scraping of hands and feet as they close in. He fumbles for a match. He is calm, even smug, until the match fails. It's one of those kinds that only ignites on the side of the box, and the box is gone. Somewhere. Lost. Maybe dropped in the forest. Maybe stolen by those whispering, creeping hands. His calm dissolves into panic. He strikes out in the dark, swinging the levers like a weapon. He tries to fit them into the machine, but Morlocks grab him. They're on him, pulling, yanking at his arms, trying to take the levers. One slips from his grip. He lunges into the darkness, headbutts something, hears a skull crack. He gets the lever back. He jams it into place, fights off the hands clawing at his shoulders, his legs, his back. The second lever clicks. He slams it forward. Suddenly the hands fall away. The darkness lifts. The silence returns. The time machine jolts back into its familiar blur of gray light and soundless wind. The world recedes. The Morlocks vanish. He's not safe yet. He doesn't know where or when he'll stop. But he's out. He's escaped. And he is alone again, flying through the centuries, away from the nightmare under the Sphinx, away from Weena, and away from the end of mankind. But he still doesn't know what future lies ahead, or whether anything human remains in it. Chapter 14. The Further Vision. Or the last sunset and the end of everything. Time travel, as the time traveler once again reminds us, is not gentle on the body or mind. And this time he's not even seated properly. He clings to the time machine sideways as it trembles through time, his thoughts scattered and his grip barely secure. When he glances at the dials, he's stunned. Instead of pulling the levers back, he has flung himself forward, deep into the future. The dials blur. Days, millennia, epochs spin away like seconds. He begins to notice changes. The light darkens. The sun's rhythm falters. The flickering alternation of day and night slows until it becomes a long, drawn-out twilight. Eventually, it stops entirely. The earth no longer rotates. The sun now hovers eternally near the horizon, massive and red, flickering in and out of brightness like a failing coal. The moon is gone. Stars crawl across the sky like dying embers. The time traveler slows the machine, wary of another violent landing. The machine settles gently on a sloping shore. He looks around. The world is unrecognizable. The sky overhead is a deep, starless red. Northward, blackness pools like ink. To the southeast, the low red sun broods near the edge of the sea. The air is thinner than any mountaintop he has ever climbed. The sea itself is still, its waves reduced to oily pulses. The only motion is the soft lapping of the tide against a shore crusted with salt. There are no signs of life, at first. Then he hears a sound, a distant shrieking cry. A shape stirs on a distant ridge, something vast and winged, like a grotesque butterfly rising and disappearing. And closer, something else moves. What he thought was a rock begins to crawl. It is a crab, but nothing like any he has seen. It is huge, the size of a table, slow, deliberate, monstrous. Its claws sway, its antennae wave like whips. Its eyes, mounted on stalks, glint with hunger. Then he feels something brush his cheek. Another antenna, another crab, right behind him. He strikes the lever and skips forward again in time, escaping by mere moments. When he stops again, the beach is crawling with them. Crabs, dozens of them, clamber through the algae-covered rocks, slow, inevitable, as if the world now belongs to creatures that never needed light or warmth or thought. He travels further, thousands of years, then millions. The sun continues to swell, now covering much of the western sky, pulsing red with dying heat. The earth is colder. The sea has pulled back. The beach is flecked with snow and ice. The stars are bright but silent. There is no sign of intelligent life. There are no animals, just lichen, liverworts, slime. He sees something move, a black shape. At first he thinks it's a rock, then it flops. He realizes it's alive, barely. Some jelly-like creature, tentacled and strange, hops along the exposed shoals. The traveler watches, sickened and exhausted. The cold is unbearable. Breathing is a struggle. The silence presses in on him, heavier than the snow. Then, in the pale, endless twilight, the sun begins to change again. A shadow grows across it. A concave bite appears in its surface. It deepens. The sky darkens. An eclipse is beginning. The traveler doesn't know if it's the moon or some other body, Mercury perhaps, that is eclipsing the sun. But the effect is total. The sky becomes black. The stars fade. The cold deepens. The wind rises. The flakes whirl faster in the air. And then, for the first time, he is truly afraid. This is not a place for life. This is not a place for thought or hope or memory. It is the end of the world in every sense. There are no voices, no movement, no warmth, only the bitter taste of extinction in the air. Something still moves. That creature on the shore, it hops again, black against the red sea, but he cannot take any more. He feels nausea rising, his limbs shake, the pain in his chest tightens. Still he climbs back onto the time machine, because whatever lies in the past, whether it be fear or failure or the memory of Weena, it is better than what waits here. And the traveler pulls the lever once more. So let's recap. Our intrepid Victorian inventor, having barely escaped underground cannibalism and emotional devastation, decides that obviously the best way to heal is by flinging himself 30 million years into the future with no helmet, no food, and no mental stability. Great plan. Excellent use of personal time. What does he find? Crabs. Giant ones. Slow, slimy, eye-stalk flailing crustacean horrors that look like the offspring of a dinner plate and a corpse. Also, a beach covered in radioactive moss and what appears to be Satan's lava lamp hanging in the sky, pretending to be the sun. Life is still hanging on, but just barely. A few limp, eldritch blobs are squirming around like bad leftovers. It's all very damp, very quiet, and very much what you'd get if entropy redecorated the earth. Then the sun starts going through some stuff. It gets eclipsed, everything goes dark, and our friend decides that maybe he's not ready to meet the cosmic void just yet. He's cold, he's dizzy, and he is, in scientific terms, done. So he climbs back onto the time machine full of dread, nausea, and whatever Victorian feelings one has after watching the universe take its final wheeze. And now, he's headed back. Backward. Back toward civilization. Back toward humanity. Or at least what's left of it. Chapter 15. The Time Traveler's Return. Or, back to the meat and newspapers. And so, just like that, the time traveler comes back. After a joyless vacation to the end of time itself, through cannibal caves and haunted museums, through crab-infested beaches and unending twilight, he finally slams the lever in reverse and hurtles backwards, through the dying ages of the earth, back into the golden age of overcooked roasts and polite disbelief. He blacks out for a while on the time machine, which feels extremely reasonable given he just witnessed the slow death of the sun. Eventually he stirs to find the sky blue again, the sun warm, and the dials spinning in reverse. Civilizations rise in a blur. Decadent ruins flicker into houses. The past, like the future, plays in fast forward, only now in rewind. As the familiar architecture of his own time reappears, he slows the machine, gently, carefully, refusing to faceplant into his own wall. The days and nights slow down their flickering. Everything begins to stabilize. He lands in his own laboratory with the delicacy of someone extremely done with cosmic horrors. One final curiosity strikes him. As he returns, he re-sees Mrs. Watchett, the housekeeper, but in reverse, gliding backwards across the room, leaving with perfect temporal elegance. It's as if time is performing a polite curtsy on his behalf. For one moment, he even glimpses Hillier, another flash of reversed motion. Time is wrapping itself up neatly, like a theater curtain falling after the strangest performance in human history. Then he stops. He's home. Everything is exactly as it was. The tools are untouched. The lab is whole. The machine has landed a few feet from where it started, just far enough to prove something real happened. He staggers off, trembling, sore, dirty, still hobbling on that injured heel, and wanders into the present, dazed and half expecting it all to vanish like a bad dream. But it doesn't. The newspaper is today's edition. The clocks read 8. The smell of dinner, actual, wholesome, terrestrial dinner, drifts into his nostrils like a divine hymn. He follows it. He hears voices, clinking cutlery, civilization. He pauses, sick, dirty, stunned, before stepping into the room and rejoining the company. "You know the rest," he says. "He washed, he dined. And now, he tells you everything, and that's the return. No fanfare, no parade, no Victorian newsboys yelling, 'Time traveler escapes crab future' in the street. Just one man, one matchbox lighter, dragging the trauma of a decayed world back to a dinner party full of skeptics. But of course the story isn't quite over yet. Next comes the question. What now? What do you do after surviving the future? And more importantly, would you believe him? Let's find out. One last chapter. Chapter 16. After the story. Or he told you, you laughed, he vanished. The time traveler finishes his story, and as silence falls over the smoking room, he does what any traumatized, exhausted man would do. He taps his pipe nervously on the fireplace like it owes him rent. Then he looks around at his audience, those skeptical, well-fed, turn-of-the-century dinner guests, and he gives them an out. Maybe it's all a dream, he says. Maybe it's fiction. Maybe he's just spinning a story to make you think. Take it as a lie if you like, or a prophecy, or both. It doesn't matter to him anymore. He's seen too much. Everyone sits in silence, avoiding each other's eyes like a room full of people who just heard a ghost story and are now pretending they're fine. The editor, professional skeptic and proud cigar killer, sighs and says it's a shame the time traveler isn't a novelist. That kind of imagination could have really sold newspapers. The time traveler shrugs it off, lights a match, and even admits he's not sure it all happened. Maybe he made it up. But then he glances at the flowers on the table, the ones Weena gave him. Strange, withered, otherworldly. Nothing like them grows here. He looks at his own hands, scars still healing from the iron bar and the Morlocks. He didn't imagine those. The medical man wants to take a closer look at the flowers. The time traveler refuses. They're not souvenirs. They're proof, or memory, or grief, or all three. Still, the atmosphere is slipping. The room is too comfortable, too warm, too real. Reality begins to feel heavier than memory. The time traveler stares around, as if trying to hold on to the dream before it fades. He grabs a lamp and leads them to the laboratory. There it is. The time machine. Real. Solid. Dirty. Bent. Grass still clinging to it from whatever twisted version of Eden he returned from. One rail is warped. The ivory is scratched. It's been used, and it's been used hard. He touches it and confirms what they all suspect. Yes, the story was true. They go back inside. Everyone leaves. Goodbyes are awkward. The medical man calls it overwork. The editor grumbles about fairy tales. The journalist just wants a cab. No one knows what to say when someone tells you the world ends in crustaceans and moonless terror. The narrator, our host in all of this, returns the next day. The time traveler is still alive, still limping, still distracted. He has a camera and a knapsack. He says he's going away, just for a moment, just to prove everything. "Give me half an hour," he says. "Stay for lunch. I'll bring back something from another time. Proof, pictures, maybe even specimens, if you'll excuse me." The narrator agrees. He waits. He picks up a newspaper. He remembers an appointment and heads down the corridor to say goodbye. Then comes the sound. A click, a thud. Shattering glass. He opens the door. There is no time traveler. Only dust, swirling in the air. One broken skylight. A glimpse, maybe, of a ghostly figure vanishing into brass and nothing. The machine is gone. The servant didn't see him leave. No one did. The narrator stays for hours, waiting. He waits for the second story, the new tale, the evidence. He's still waiting. That was 3 years ago. And the time traveler, our explorer, our eccentric, our guide through the rise and fall of humanity, has never returned. The end. Or, depending on your optimism level, to be continued forever. Maybe he's still out there. Maybe he found something better. Maybe he found something worse. Or maybe finally, he just wanted to go back for her. Epilogue. Flowers, fossils, and a future undecided. Or the universe may be doomed, but at least we have souvenirs. And so we end, not with certainty, not with glory, but with wondering. The time traveler is gone. Maybe forever. Maybe not. His fate is unknown, which feels appropriate, given he's the man who broke time open and then vanished into it like a ripple swallowed by the sea. He could be anywhere. Or anywhen. Perhaps he went back, far back into prehistory, dropped into a muddy nightmare of fur, fangs, and flint tools, where no amount of polite conversation could protect him from a hungry hominid with a rock. Maybe he landed face first in the Cretaceous, where he's now the honorary chew toy of a plesiosaurus. Or maybe he's standing right now on some steaming Jurassic swamp, cursing himself for not inventing a mosquito net. Or maybe he went forward again, further than before. Not to the Eloi, not to the Morlocks, but into a time when humans, real, thoughtful, inconveniently hopeful humans, have figured things out. Where kindness and science are no longer in opposition. Where civilization isn't something you survive, but something you live. That's what the narrator hopes, because he can't accept that this age of half-answers, noise, pettiness, and endless squabbling is the best we'll ever be. The time traveler, he suspects, didn't believe in progress. Not really. He'd seen enough to know that piling up ideas and calling it civilization doesn't mean it won't all collapse under its own weight. But that doesn't mean we get to stop trying. Not yet. We don't know what's out there in time, but we do know what's in the present. And on the narrator's desk, there are 2 dried white flowers, strange and brittle, brought back from a future where humanity had almost entirely forgotten itself. They're not proof of technology. They're not weapons. They're not even useful. But they are proof of something else. That gratitude and affection and something like love still lingered, even at the end. Even when the world had collapsed, even when intellect was gone and only memory remained, someone had thought to offer a gift. So maybe that's what lasts. Not machines, not monuments, but gestures, kindnesses, a flower, a hand held, a name remembered. And that's the story. The time machine is gone. The time traveler has vanished. But the story and the flowers remain. The future, for now, is still unknown. But for those who believe him, it has just begun. Reflection. What the time machine is really about. Or, you thought it was about time travel. Cute. At first glance, the time machine looks like classic adventure fiction. A clever Victorian man builds a machine, zips through history, battles a few monsters, and returns in time for dinner. But that's just the dressing. The real story is something much colder, more philosophical, and yes, more devastating. This isn't a story about time. It's a story about what time does to humanity. H.G. Wells isn't interested in the nuts and bolts of science fiction for spectacle. He's interested in it as a scalpel, something to peel back the optimistic skin of Victorian progress and show what's writhing underneath. The time traveler goes forward not to marvel, but to mourn. He finds the Eloi, beautiful, delicate, useless, a civilization that got everything it wanted, comfort, peace, equality, and paid for it with curiosity, courage, and thought. They are the descendants of the privileged, those who retreated from the world's problems until they had no problems and no minds left. Then he finds the Morlocks, dirty, violent, mechanical. The underclass, literally driven underground, forced to serve for so long that they devolved into nocturnal predators. But they are the ones with the power now. They hold the keys. They have the machine. The time traveler wanted to witness the triumph of mankind, but what he sees is its division, stretched to the breaking point until both halves lose their humanity. And the future beyond that? Crabs, lichen, slime, silence. The further he goes, the less recognizable life becomes, until at the very edge of time there's nothing left but heat, death, and a flickering sun. Not even darkness wants to stay. So what is Wells really saying? He's not just warning us about evolution. He's warning us about complacency, about the way class, technology, and comfort can lull a species into extinction. He's not preaching that we will become monsters. He's asking, what happens if we simply stop trying? If we let the machines think for us, the workers labor for us, the future come without question. In that way, the time traveler isn't just a protagonist. He's a kind of stand-in for Wells and for us. He's the curious mind, daring to look forward even when the answers are terrifying. And his greatest discovery isn't a machine. It's that the future isn't guaranteed to be better. It's only what we make it. But amidst all the horror, one detail refuses to fade. Weena's flowers. She couldn't think clearly. She didn't understand language or technology or even time. But she gave him something. Useless, fragile, and entirely human. A gesture of affection, of gratitude, of memory. Even at the end of the world, that survived. And maybe, just maybe, that's the only thing that ever really matters. So yes, The Time Machine is a science fiction story, but it's also a warning and a question. And maybe, if you squint through the ruins, a hope.